Commander Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the exploration ship Persistence, watching the stars drift past through the main view screen. The ship had been traveling through deep space for 3 months now, carrying 2,000 sleeping colonists toward a new world. It was humanity's first attempt to establish a colony beyond their home solar system. The bridge was quiet except for the soft humming of the ship's engines. Most of the crew was asleep during this shift, leaving only the essential personnel on duty. Hyunwoo preferred these peaceful moments. They gave him time to think about the enormous responsibility he carried. Chief Engineer So-min looked up from her console, her dark eyes focused with concern. She had been monitoring the ship's systems when something unusual appeared on her sensors. The readings were unlike anything in their databases. "Commander?" So-min called out, her voice steady but alert. "I'm detecting strange energy patterns ahead of us. The signatures are completely unknown." Navigator Taeho turned from his station, his fingers dancing across the control panels as he analyzed the data. His mathematical mind worked quickly to process the information. What he found made him pause. "Sir, there's something massive out there," Taeho reported. "The energy readings suggest an object at least 50 times larger than our ship. It appears to be artificial." Hyunwoo moved to the center of the bridge, his mind racing through possibilities. First contact with an alien civilization was always a possibility on deep space missions, but they had never expected to encounter one so far from any known star system. "Can you identify what kind of propulsion system it's using?" Hyunwoo asked. So-min shook her head. "Nothing like our fusion drives or ion engines. The energy patterns are completely different, more advanced than anything we've ever seen." The bridge fell silent as the crew processed this information. They were explorers and scientists, not soldiers. The Persistence was equipped with basic defensive weapons, but they were designed for asteroid clearing and emergency protection, not combat with an unknown alien force. "Should we change course, Commander?" Taeho asked quietly. Hyunwoo considered the option. They could try to avoid the alien vessel, but their mission was exploration and discovery. Running away at the first sign of alien life would go against everything they stood for. Besides, if this civilization was advanced enough to build ships of that size, they probably already knew about the human vessel. Negative, Hyunwoo decided. We maintain course but reduce speed to half. Prepare a standard first contact message in multiple mathematical languages. If they're advanced enough to build that ship, they should be able to understand basic mathematics. So-min's console suddenly lit up with new warnings. The energy readings were changing rapidly, growing stronger by the second. Something was happening to the alien vessel. "Commander, the object is moving," Taeho announced, his voice tight with tension. "It's approaching our position at incredible speed." The view screen flickered, and then displayed something that made the entire bridge crew stop breathing. A massive ship materialized before them, so large that their own vessel looked like a small boat next to a mountain. The alien ship was unlike anything they had imagined. The hull appeared to be organic, with smooth curves and surfaces that seemed to pulse with life. Glowing veins of energy ran along its length like blood vessels. Strange protrusions and appendages extended from various points, giving it the appearance of some vast sea creature adapted for space travel. "Incredible," So-min whispered. "It's not just a ship, it's alive." Before anyone could respond, their communication system activated without warning. A voice filled the bridge, speaking in accented but clear human language. The tone was condescending, like an adult addressing a small child. "Primitive vessel, you have entered territory claimed by the Valith Empire. I am Admiral Velthar of the Dreadnought Supremacy. Your species is unknown to our records, but your technology level suggests you are barely capable of basic space travel." Hyunwoo stepped forward, activating the ship's communication system. "This is Commander Hyunwoo of the human exploration vessel Persistence. We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic contact with your civilization." There was a pause, followed by what sounded suspiciously like laughter. When Velthar spoke again, the amusement in his voice was clear. "Diplomatic contact? How amusing. We have been observing your species for several of your decades. You have only recently achieved primitive spaceflight. Your wars, your pollution, your inability to work together, mark you as barely evolved creatures who somehow stumbled into the stars. Somin and Taeho exchanged glances. The aliens' words were insulting, but they also revealed important information. This Veilith Empire had been watching Earth for a long time. We may be new to deep space exploration, Hyunwoo replied carefully, but we are a peaceful species seeking to learn and grow. We pose no threat to your empire. Threat? Velthar's voice carried more laughter. You misunderstand your situation, primitive one. Your species now exists under the protection and authority of the Veilith Empire. You will surrender your vessel and submit to our guidance. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Hyunwoo felt the eyes of his crew upon him. Somin's hand moved quietly to her console, preparing to implement emergency protocols. Taeho began calculating possible escape routes, though he knew their chances were slim against such an advanced vessel. I appreciate your offer, Hyunwoo said diplomatically, but humanity values its freedom. We cannot accept subjugation to any empire, no matter how advanced. The response came swiftly and decisively. A pulse of energy erupted from the alien dreadnought, washing over the Persistence like a wave. Every system on the bridge flickered and died for a moment before emergency power restored basic functions. Your weapons are now disabled, Velthar announced casually. Your engines are functioning at 30% capacity. This demonstration should clarify the difference between our civilizations. You exist because we allow it. You will surrender because resistance is impossible. Somin checked her systems quickly. The alien was telling the truth. Their main weapons were completely non-functional, and several critical systems were operating on emergency power only. The casual ease with which the Veilith had disabled their ship was both terrifying and impressive. Commander, Taeho said quietly, even at full power, we couldn't outrun that ship. Our weapons were never designed to fight something like that. Hyunwoo nodded slowly. They were outmatched in every way that mattered. The smart thing would be to surrender and hope the aliens were as benevolent as they claimed to be. But something deep inside him rebelled against the idea of giving up without a fight. A new energy field surrounded the Persistence, and Hyunwoo felt the ship being drawn toward the massive alien vessel. Hangar bays the size of city blocks opened in the dreadnought's hull, ready to swallow their small ship entirely. Do not be afraid, young flesh. Velthar's voice continued with false kindness. The Veilith Empire is generous to those who accept their place. You will be well cared for, though your freedom is now forfeit. As the Persistence was pulled into the alien ship, Hyunwoo looked around at his crew. Somin was studying her disabled systems with the intensity of someone planning repairs. Taeho was memorizing every detail of their capture. None of them looked defeated, despite their hopeless situation. The Veilith had superior technology and overwhelming power. They had been observing humanity for decades and clearly considered humans to be inferior beings. But as the hangar bay doors closed around them, Hyunwoo realized something the aliens might have missed in their observations. Humans had a long history of surprising their enemies, especially when those enemies underestimated them. The Veilith might control their ship, but they didn't understand the species they had just captured. The real encounter was just beginning. The detention cells aboard the Veilith dreadnought were unlike anything the human crew had ever seen. Energy barriers hummed softly where walls should have been, creating transparent cages that allowed the guards to observe their prisoners at all times. The floor beneath their feet felt warm and slightly soft, as if they were standing inside a living creature. Commander Hyunwoo sat on the simple bench provided in his cell, watching the alien guards patrol the corridor outside. The Veilith were tall beings, nearly 8 feet in height, wearing what appeared to be biomechanical suits that pulsed with the same energy patterns as their ship. Their faces were hidden behind smooth masks that glowed with soft blue light. Doctor. Janae occupied the cell next to his, and she had not stopped observing their captors since their arrival. Her scientific mind was working constantly, cataloging every detail about the alien physiology and technology. She had always been curious about life beyond Earth. But this was far from the peaceful first contact she had imagined. The suits are not just protective gear, Janae whispered to Hyunwoo during a quiet moment between guard patrols. I think they need them to survive. Watch how they move. The suits are doing most of the work. Hyunwoo followed her gaze and noticed what she meant. The Valeth moved with a strange flowing motion, as if they were floating rather than walking. Their suits seemed to anticipate their movements, supporting them in ways that suggested the beings inside might be quite different from what they appeared. Security Chief Dong Min had been placed in a cell across the corridor. His military training made him naturally observant of security procedures, and he had been studying the guard rotation since their capture 6 hours ago. The aliens followed predictable patterns, changing shifts every 4 hours with a brief overlap period where both groups were present. 12 guards total, Dongmin reported quietly when the corridor was empty. They rotate in groups of 4. During shift changes, there are 8 guards present for approximately 10 minutes. The rest of the time, only 4 guards patrolled this entire section. Communications officer Yoon-ji was in the cell beside Dongmin, and she had been experimenting with the electromagnetic fields that powered their prison barriers. Her background in communications technology helped her understand that the energy patterns were not random. There were frequencies and pulses that suggested a complex network throughout the ship. I think I can tap into their communication system, Yoon-ji whispered. The energy barriers are connected to the ship's main network. If I can find the right frequency, I might be able to access information about our situation. Chief Engineer So-min appeared to be the most defeated of the group. She sat in her cell with her head in her hands, staring at the floor as if she had given up all hope. The guards had commented several times about the broken spirit of the human engineer, pointing her out to other crew members as an example of how quickly humans accepted their fate. But Hyunwoo knew So-min better than that. He had served with her for 3 years and had never seen her truly give up on anything. Her apparent despair was an act, and he suspected she was using the time to analyze something important. Navigator Tae-ho was in the cell furthest from the entrance, and he had been creating mental maps of everything he had seen during their capture. His mathematical mind was processing the layout of the ship, the dimensions of the corridors, and the logical patterns of the vessel's design. The guards talked freely in front of their prisoners, assuming that even if the humans could understand their language, the information would be useless to such primitive beings. Admiral Velthar had visited once to mock their capture, explaining that they were being taken to the Valeth capital world to be displayed as curiosities. Your species will provide excellent entertainment, one guard said to another during their patrol. The Emperor enjoys seeing new forms of life, especially ones that achieved space travel despite their obvious limitations. These humans are even weaker than the Zephyrians were, the second guard replied. At least those creatures attempted to fight back when we captured their vessels. These ones surrendered immediately after a simple weapons demonstration. Dr. Jinne filed away every word, building a picture of the Valeth Empire and their treatment of other species. It seemed they had conquered many civilizations, always using superior technology to force submission. The guards spoke of humans as if they were collecting specimens for a zoo. During the second day of their captivity, maintenance specialist Kyung-soo was brought from the lower detention areas where the rest of the crew was being held. The guards had decided that some prisoners could be useful for basic labor, while the ship traveled to the capital world. The young flesh can clean the waste processing areas, one guard announced. Even primitives should be capable of such simple tasks. Kyung-soo accepted the assignment with apparent gratitude, thanking the guards for the opportunity to be useful. The guards were pleased by his submissive attitude and began giving him access to areas of the ship that were normally restricted to prisoners. What the Valeth did not realize was that Kyung-soo had an engineer's eye for systems and infrastructure. Every corridor he cleaned, every waste processing unit he serviced, gave him knowledge about the ship's internal workings. He memorized pipe layouts, power distribution nodes, and structural weak points. On the third day, Admiral Velthar returned to check on his prisoners. He walked slowly along the corridor, examining each human with the detached interest of someone, studying insects. I am curious about your species, Velthar said, stopping in front of Dr. Jinne's cell. Your technology suggests intelligence, yet you submitted so easily to capture. Are all humans such cowards, or are you simply more realistic than most species? Jinne looked up at the Admiral with what appeared to be genuine admiration. Your technology is incredible. We have never seen anything like your bioships or energy weapons. We are honored to be guests of such an advanced civilization." Velthar seemed pleased by her response. The other guards had told him that this particular human had been asking many questions about Velith culture and technology. He interpreted her curiosity as appropriate respect for their superiority. "Your species shows wisdom in recognizing the natural order," Velthar replied. "The strong guide the weak. The advanced educate the primitive. Under Velith guidance, humans will learn their proper place in the galaxy." "Could you tell us more about your amazing ships?" Jin'e asked with apparent fascination. "How do you make them alive? How do your energy beings connect to the biomechanical systems?" The Admiral was happy to demonstrate his superiority by explaining concepts he believed were far beyond human understanding. He described how Velith consciousness existed as pure energy, how they inhabited biomechanical suits to interact with the physical world, and how their ships were grown rather than built. Every word he spoke gave Jin'e more pieces of the puzzle she was assembling in her mind. She learned about the electromagnetic frequencies that connected Velith energy beings to their suits. She discovered that their bioships required careful maintenance of organic systems. She found out about the specific nutrient mixtures that kept the living vessels healthy. Somin continued her act of despair, but her eyes were constantly moving, studying the energy patterns in the walls and ceiling. She was learning how power flowed through the ship's organic systems, mapping the electrical pathways that kept the massive vessel functioning. Yunji had successfully tapped into the ship's communication network, though she was careful to access only passive information that would not trigger security alerts. She learned about their destination, the ship's crew complement, and the security procedures that governed prisoner management. Tai Ho had created detailed mental blueprints of every area they had seen, calculating distances and mapping possible routes through the ship. His mathematical mind was already working on escape scenarios, though he kept his thoughts to himself. Dongmin had identified weaknesses in the guard procedures, times when security was lightest, and methods that could be used to overcome individual guards. His military training told him that even the most advanced enemy could be defeated if their weaknesses were exploited properly. As the fourth day of captivity ended, Hyunwoo realized that his crew was not broken or defeated. They were learning, planning, and preparing for an opportunity that might never come. The Velith believed they had captured a group of primitive beings who would accept their fate without resistance. They had no idea they were holding some of humanity's most capable individuals, people who specialized in solving impossible problems and finding ways to make things work against all odds. The aliens had made the fundamental error of judging humans by their technology, rather than their character. The prison cells contained the crew's bodies, but their minds were free and working. Soon the Velith would discover the difference between capturing humans and controlling them. By the fifth day of their captivity, the Velith guards had become completely careless around their human prisoners. They spoke freely about ship operations, left sensitive areas poorly guarded, and treated the humans like harmless pets rather than potential threats. This casual attitude was exactly what the crew had been hoping for. Maintenance specialist Kyung-soo had been assigned to cleaning duties throughout the lower decks of the massive bioship. The guards barely supervised him anymore, confident that a primitive human could not understand or sabotage their advanced systems. They had no idea that Kyung-soo was systematically mapping every critical system he encountered. The ship's waste processing areas led him to the main nutrient distribution networks that fed the living vessel. He discovered that the bioship required a delicate balance of organic compounds to maintain its health. Any disruption to these systems would cause problems throughout the entire vessel. While cleaning the engineering sections, Kyung-soo found the primary power distribution nodes. The Velith technology was incredibly advanced, but it followed logical principles that any good engineer could understand. He noted which systems were critical, which had backup power sources, and which failures would cascade into larger problems. "Doctor," Jin'e continued her conversations with the guards and Admiral Velthar, always appearing fascinated by their superior knowledge. The Velith loved to demonstrate their advanced understanding, and she encouraged them to explain more and more about their technology and biology. "Your energy beings are so incredible," Jeannie said to one of the guards during feeding time. How? Do you maintain connection to your biomechanical suits over such long periods? The guard was happy to explain that Valith consciousness existed as electromagnetic patterns that synchronized with their suits through specific frequency ranges. If these frequencies were disrupted, the connection would be severed temporarily, leaving the energy being unable to control its physical form. Of course, such disruption would require precise electromagnetic manipulation, the guard added dismissively, far beyond the capabilities of primitive species like yours. Ginny nodded eagerly, absorbing every detail. In her mind, she was already designing devices that could generate the exact frequencies needed to disrupt Valith consciousness. The materials she needed were all around them in their prison cells and the ship's waste systems. Chief Engineer So-Min maintained her performance of despair and defeat, but her constant observation of the ship's energy patterns had revealed crucial information. The bioship's organic components were incredibly sophisticated, but they were also vulnerable in ways that purely mechanical systems were not. The living vessel required constant care and feeding, like any biological organism. Its circulatory systems carried nutrients throughout the ship. Its nervous system coordinated complex operations, and its immune system fought off harmful influences. But these same biological processes could be turned against the ship if someone understood how to exploit them. So-Min had identified several chemical compounds available in cleaning supplies and waste products that would be toxic to the ship's organic systems. Introduced into the nutrient streams at the right concentrations, these compounds would cause the bioship to literally poison itself. Navigator Tae-ho had been carefully observing the ship's daily routines and operational cycles. His mathematical mind had identified patterns in everything from guard rotations to power distribution. Most importantly, he had discovered that the massive vessel had a rest period when most systems switched to automated control. During this rest cycle, which lasted approximately 4 hours each day, the majority of the Valith crew entered regenerative states similar to sleep. Security was reduced to minimal levels, automated systems took over most functions, and response times to emergencies would be significantly slower. Communications Officer Yoon-ji had made remarkable progress in accessing the ship's information networks. Her careful probing had revealed the location of their own ship within the massive hangar bay, the security codes needed to access various systems, and most importantly, the communication frequencies used by other human vessels. She had also discovered how to activate the emergency revival systems for the sleeping colonists aboard the Persistence. When the time came, she could wake specific individuals who had the skills needed for their escape plan. Security Chief Dong-min had cataloged every weakness in the Valith security procedures. The guards were overconfident and predictable, following the same routes and timing with mechanical precision. Their weapons were powered by the same bioship systems that So-Min was planning to sabotage. Most importantly, Dong-min had realized that the Valith had no experience fighting an enemy that refused to surrender. Every other species they had encountered had submitted after a demonstration of superior force. They had no training or preparation for guerrilla warfare or unpredictable tactics. On the 7th day, Admiral Velthar made his most critical mistake. Feeling generous and wanting to demonstrate the overwhelming superiority of Valith civilization, he decided to give the human prisoners a tour of his ship's bridge and command centers. "You should see what true advancement looks like," Velthar announced as guards escorted the prisoners through the ship's most sensitive areas. "Perhaps witnessing our capabilities will help your species understand their proper place in the galaxy." The Bridge of the Supremacy was a marvel of biomechanical engineering. Living walls pulsed with data streams, organic interfaces responded to thought commands, and the ship's consciousness communicated directly with its Valith operators. It was beautiful, sophisticated, and exactly what the humans needed to see. Velthar explained their weapon systems, which could disintegrate matter at the molecular level. He described their shields, which were supposedly impenetrable to any known technology. He showed them the faster-than-light drive that allowed the massive ship to travel between star systems in days, rather than years. Even with this knowledge, your primitive minds cannot comprehend how to use such technology, Velthar said with patronizing kindness. You lack the intelligence and the courage to challenge forces beyond your understanding. The Admiral was particularly proud of the ship's organic control systems. He explained how the bioship's consciousness worked in harmony with Valith operators, how the living vessel could repair itself from damage, and how its biological systems made it superior to mechanical technology. What Velthar did not realize was that he was giving a detailed briefing to some of humanity's most capable individuals. Commander Hyunwoo memorized the command structure and decision-making processes. So-min studied the integration between biological and technological systems. Jin-A analyzed the interaction between Valith consciousness and ship operations. During the tour, they were also shown the hangar bay where the Persistence was being held. Yoonji noted the security measures protecting their ship, while Tai-ho calculated the exact route they would need to take to reach it. Kyung-soo observed the hangar's environmental systems and emergency procedures. The guards accompanying them were relaxed and casual, treating the tour like a field trip for curious children. They answered questions freely, explained technical details without concern, and even discussed the ship's daily operational schedule. Your vessel will remain in our hangar until we reach the capital world, one guard explained helpfully. Then it will be transferred to the Imperial Museum as an example of primitive space technology. By the end of the tour, the human crew had learned everything they needed to know about the Valith ship's capabilities, weaknesses, and operational procedures. Velthar had intended to demonstrate his civilization's superiority and crush any thoughts of resistance. Instead, he had provided the intelligence necessary for the humans to plan their escape. The Admiral looked at his prisoners with satisfaction, confident that they now understood the futility of opposing Valith power. Commander Hyun-woo met the eyes of each crew member briefly as they were escorted back to their cells. In those silent glances, they confirmed that everyone had gathered the information they needed. The planning phase was complete. The Valith had made the classic mistake of underestimating their enemy. They had assumed that superior technology automatically meant superior intelligence and superior courage. They had forgotten that the most dangerous opponents were often those who had nothing left to lose. As the cell barriers reactivated around them, the humans appeared defeated and awed by what they had seen. The guards congratulated themselves on breaking the spirits of the primitive beings who had dared to resist Valith authority. They had no idea that they had just armed their prisoners with everything needed to turn their own ship against them. The real battle was about to begin. That night, during the ship's rest cycle when most guards were in their regenerative states, Commander Hyunwoo revealed the truth to any Valith who might be listening through surveillance systems. His crew had never been defeated or broken. Every moment of apparent despair had been carefully calculated preparation. What appeared to be surrender was actually reconnaissance, Hyunwoo said quietly to his fellow prisoners. We have been gathering intelligence from the moment of our capture. Each of you has been studying different aspects of this ship and its crew. Now we combine that knowledge into action. Chief Engineer So-min lifted her head, and the defeated expression she had worn for days disappeared completely. Her eyes were sharp and focused as she began explaining what she had discovered about the bioship's vulnerabilities. The Valith ship is essentially a massive living organism, So-min said. It requires constant nutrient flow through organic circulatory systems. I have identified several common cleaning compounds that are highly toxic to biological tissues. When introduced into the ship's nutrient streams, they will cause system failures throughout the vessel. She had been collecting these compounds during her apparent despair, hiding small amounts in her clothing and personal items. The guards had never searched her thoroughly because they considered humans too primitive to understand their technology well enough to sabotage it. The beauty of biological warfare against a bioship, So-min continued, is that the damage spreads naturally through the organism's own systems. One small introduction of toxins will cascade into major system failures as the ship tries to fight off what it perceives as infection. Dr. Jin-A contributed her own discoveries about Valith physiology and the electromagnetic frequencies that disrupted their connection to biomechanical suits. Using components salvaged from their prison barriers and waste systems, she had constructed several small devices capable of generating the precise frequencies needed. Valith consciousness exists as electromagnetic energy patterns, Jin'e explained. Disrupt those patterns and they lose control of their physical forms temporarily. The effect lasts approximately 15 minutes before they can re-establish connection. During that time, they are essentially helpless. She showed the others the frequency generators she had built, devices no larger than a human palm, but capable of disabling multiple Valith guards simultaneously. The aliens' own advanced technology had provided the materials needed to defeat them. Navigator Tae-ho had used his mathematical abilities to calculate precise timing for their escape attempt. He had identified the optimal window during the ship's rest cycle when security was lightest and automated systems were handling most operations. We have a 4-hour window each day when guard presence drops to minimum levels, Tae-ho reported. During this time, response to emergencies is delayed because most crew members are regenerating. If we begin our operation 90 minutes into the rest cycle, we will have maximum time before reinforcements can respond effectively. His mental maps of the ship's layout showed them the fastest routes to critical systems, the hangar bay where their ship waited, and alternate paths if their primary routes were blocked. Every corridor, every junction, every possible obstacle had been analyzed and planned for. Security Chief Dong-min had developed combat strategies specifically adapted to fighting the Valith aboard their own ship. His military experience told him that conventional tactics would fail against such technologically superior opponents, but unconventional approaches might succeed. The Valith have never faced guerrilla warfare, Dong-min explained. Every species they have conquered submitted after demonstrations of superior force. They have no experience with enemies who use improvised weapons, unpredictable tactics, and their own ship systems against them. Communications Officer Yoonji had established contact with the emergency revival systems aboard the Persistence. She could wake specific colonists who had engineering, security, or technical skills needed for the escape operation. I have identified 23 colonists with backgrounds that would be useful for our operation, Yoonji reported. They include engineers who can operate our ship systems, security personnel who can assist with combat operations, and technical specialists who can help with sabotage efforts. The plan they developed was ambitious and dangerous, but it played to humanity's greatest strengths. Rather than trying to match Valith technology directly, they would use intelligence, adaptability, and the willingness to take desperate risks that more advanced civilizations had forgotten. Maintenance specialist Kyung-soo would begin the operation by introducing So-min's chemical compounds into the ship's nutrient distribution systems. This would start a cascade of biological failures throughout the vessel, weakening systems and creating confusion among the crew. Dr. Jin-A would use her electromagnetic frequency generators to disable guards in critical areas, creating windows of opportunity for the team to move through the ship. Her devices were small enough to be concealed and could be activated remotely using simple timer mechanisms. So-min would target the ship's primary power distribution nodes, using her engineering knowledge to create feedback loops and system overloads that would disable weapons, shields, and propulsion systems. The bioship's organic components made it vulnerable to sabotage techniques that would never work against purely mechanical technology. Tae-ho would guide the team through his mapped routes to avoid automated defenses and security checkpoints. His mathematical analysis of the ship's systems would allow them to predict which areas would be safe and which would become dangerous as the sabotage progressed. Dong-min would lead the combat elements of the operation, using improvised weapons and guerrilla tactics to overcome guards who survived Jin-A's electromagnetic attacks. His goal was not to fight fair, but to win by any means necessary. Yoonji would revive selected colonists and coordinate communications between different teams operating throughout the ship. She would also prepare their own vessel for immediate departure once they reached the hangar bay. Commander Hyun-woo would coordinate the overall operation, making real-time decisions as circumstances changed. His leadership experience would be crucial for adapting the plan when inevitable complications arose. The most audacious part of their plan was what would happen after they escaped their prison. Rather than simply trying to flee, they would actively sabotage the massive dreadnought while simultaneously rescuing their colonists and escaping in their own ship. The Valith expect us to run, Hyun-woo explained. They are prepared for cowardly flight from superior force. They are not prepared for an attack from supposedly primitive beings who refuse to accept defeat. Each team member would carry multiple contingency plans because human adaptability was their greatest advantage. When situations changed, they would improvise solutions that the rigid Valith command structure could not match. The psychological aspect of their plan was equally important. By demonstrating that humans would not submit to superior force, they would shatter Valith assumptions about primitive species. The aliens had built their empire on the belief that technological superiority automatically meant dominance. We are not just escaping, Hyunwoo continued. We are proving that humanity cannot be conquered by superior technology alone. We are showing the galaxy that humans will fight for freedom regardless of the odds. The plan required perfect timing, flawless execution, and enormous courage from every participant. They would be fighting the most advanced civilization in known space using improvised weapons and desperate tactics. But they had advantages the Valith did not understand. Human creativity in desperate situations, the ability to make impossible things work through pure determination, and the refusal to surrender even when victory seemed impossible. As the rest cycle continued around them, the human prisoners finalized their preparations. Tomorrow they would discover whether intelligence and courage could overcome superior technology. The Valith had made the mistake of underestimating humans. They were about to learn why that was dangerous. The escape began exactly 90 minutes into the ship's rest cycle, when most of the Valith crew was deep in regenerative states and automated systems controlled the massive bioship. Maintenance specialist Kyung-soo made the first move, introducing So-min's carefully prepared chemical compounds into the ship's nutrient distribution networks. The effect was immediate and devastating. The living vessel's organic systems recognized the toxins as a serious threat and began fighting what they perceived as a massive infection. Emergency lighting flickered throughout the ship as biological circuits misfired. Artificial gravity fluctuated wildly as the ship's inner ear organs became disoriented. Warning alarms began sounding throughout the dreadnought, but the automated systems could not identify the source of the problem. The bioship was poisoning itself through its own circulatory system, and the damage was spreading faster than any mechanical repair could address. Dr. Jin-A activated her electromagnetic frequency generators precisely on schedule. The small devices she had constructed from prison barrier components and waste system materials proved devastatingly effective against the Valith guards. Throughout the detention areas, alien guards collapsed as their connection to biomechanical suits was severed. The electromagnetic pulses disrupted the energy patterns that allowed Valith consciousness to control their physical forms. Guards, who had seemed invincible with their advanced weapons and armor, suddenly became helpless, unable to coordinate their movements or activate their equipment. Commander Hyunwoo and his team moved through the ship like ghosts, using Taeho's mapped routes to avoid major security checkpoints and automated defenses. Their small size and adaptability allowed them to navigate through maintenance passages and service corridors that the larger Valith had never considered vulnerable points. Meanwhile, Communications Officer Yoon-ji successfully activated the emergency revival systems aboard the Persistence. Key colonists with engineering, security, and technical backgrounds began awakening from cryosleep, their pods automatically dispensing stimulants to bring them to full consciousness quickly. The awakened. Humans demonstrated the remarkable adaptability that defined their species. Within minutes of revival, they were absorbing information about their situation, learning the ship's layout and joining the escape operation. No extensive briefings were needed. They understood immediately what was required and began working toward the common goal. Engineer Hai-jin took control of the Persistence's systems, beginning startup procedures that would allow immediate departure once the rest of the team arrived. Security specialist Minho organized the awakened colonists into combat teams, using improvised weapons created from ship components and maintenance tools. Chief Engineer So-min reached the bioship's primary power distribution nodes and began her systematic sabotage. Her engineering knowledge, combined with understanding of the vessel's biological systems, allowed her to create cascade failures that spread throughout the ship's infrastructure. She introduced feedback loops into power systems, causing organic circuits to overload and shut down. She manipulated nutrient flows to starve critical systems while flooding others with excess energy. Most importantly, she began destabilizing the delicate balance that kept the massive living ship healthy and functional. The Valith crew began emerging from their regenerative states as emergency alarms penetrated their rest cycle, but they found their ship in chaos. Systems were failing throughout the vessel. Guards were incapacitated by unknown weapons, and small human figures were moving through areas that should have been completely secure. Admiral Velthar reached his command center to find his bridge, crew struggling with multiple system failures. The bioship's consciousness was reporting damage throughout its body, but the nature of the attack was unlike anything in Valith experience. How can such primitive beings cause this level of damage? Velthar demanded as his officers tried to restore systems and locate the escaped prisoners. "We cannot isolate the source of the biological contamination," one officer reported. "The ship's immune system is fighting something, but our sensors cannot identify what it is fighting." Navigator Te-Ho led his team through corridors filled with emergency lighting and confused alien crew members. His mathematical analysis of the ship's systems allowed him to predict which areas would remain safe as the sabotage progressed, guiding them away from sections where automated defenses might still be functional. Security Chief Dong Min encountered his first group of armed Valith guards who had not been affected by Jin-A's electromagnetic weapons. His guerrilla warfare training proved invaluable as he led improvised attacks using tactics the aliens had never seen. Instead of facing the Valith in direct combat where their superior technology would dominate, Dong Min used hit-and-run attacks, improvised weapons, and the ship's own failing systems against them. He turned maintenance equipment into weapons, used environmental hazards as force multipliers, and coordinated attacks from multiple directions simultaneously. The Valith guards were trained to fight conventional battles against enemies who used similar technology and tactics. They had no preparation for humans who refused to fight fair, who used every available resource as a weapon, and who adapted their strategies in real time as circumstances changed. As the human teams moved through the ship, they encountered other crew members who had been imprisoned with them. The detention areas held humans from various ship departments, all of whom had been planning and preparing during their captivity. Each group brought additional skills and knowledge to the operation. Hydroponics specialist Dayun understood the ship's organic systems well enough to accelerate the biological sabotage. Communications technician Wu Jin helped expand their control over the ship's information networks. The rescue operation became a coordinated assault as more humans joined the effort. They moved through the massive bioship like antibodies attacking an infection, systematically disabling systems and overwhelming security forces through pure determination and adaptability. But Admiral Velthar was not helpless. Despite the chaos affecting his ship, he retained control of the bridge and began implementing countermeasures. He activated automated defense systems that had not been affected by the biological sabotage, sealing critical areas and deploying robotic security. Units' emergency bulkheads began closing throughout the ship, attempting to trap the human infiltrators in specific sections. Defense drones activated and began hunting the escapees with sensors that could track human life signs. The ship's artificial intelligence started coordinating a systematic lockdown of all non-essential areas. This was where human adaptability truly showed its value. Instead of being trapped by the countermeasures, the humans adapted their plan in real time. They used the ship's own biological systems against the mechanical defenses, turning Somin's sabotage into an advantage rather than just a distraction. The bioship's failing health created gaps in the security net. Automated systems malfunctioned as organic components died, creating opportunities that had not existed in the original plan. The humans exploited every failure, every malfunction, every weakness that their sabotage had created. Commander Hyun-woo coordinated the various teams through hand signals and predetermined communication codes, maintaining operational security, even as the situation became increasingly chaotic. His leadership kept the escape operation focused on its primary objectives, despite the growing complications. The human teams finally reached the hangar bay where the Persistence waited. However, Admiral Velthar had anticipated this destination and prepared his trap. The hangar was surrounded by automated weapon systems and a full company of Valith guards who had not been affected by the electromagnetic attacks. As the humans approached their ship, Velthar's voice echoed through the hangar's communication system. "Did you really think you could escape so easily? I have been allowing your pitiful rebellion to proceed so that I could demonstrate to my crew how quickly human resistance crumbles when faced with true power." The hangar bay doors sealed, trapping the humans between their ship and overwhelming enemy force. Automated weapons powered up, targeting systems locked onto human life signs, and Valith guards prepared to end the escape attempt with decisive force. But Commander Hyunwoo had one more surprise that the Admiral had not anticipated. The humans had never intended to simply run away. They had been preparing for a confrontation that would prove something important about their species to themselves and to the galaxy. The real battle was about to begin. As the Persistence undocked from the Valith Dreadnought's hangar bay, Admiral Velthar activated his ship's primary weapons with complete confidence. The massive energy cannons that had destroyed planets would make short work of the small human vessel. He expected to vaporize the escapees and end their rebellion in a single devastating attack. Instead, nothing happened. The weapon systems flickered with power surges, sparked briefly, and then went completely dark. Somin's biological sabotage had spread throughout the ship's organic circuits, and the living vessel could no longer coordinate the complex energy flows needed for its most powerful weapons. Velthar stared at his malfunctioning controls in disbelief. The bioship that had conquered dozens of star systems was being destroyed from within by simple chemical compounds introduced by primitive beings who barely understood faster-than-light travel. But the humans were far from finished. In the ultimate display of human audacity, Commander Hyunwoo did not order a retreat to safety. Instead, he activated the Persistence's communication systems and broadcast on all frequencies throughout the sector. "This is Commander Hyunwoo of the human exploration vessel Persistence," his voice rang out across space. "We are engaging a Valith dreadnought that believed humans would submit to superior force. Today we prove that freedom cannot be conquered by technology alone." The message was transmitted to every ship, every monitoring station, and every civilization within range. Human and alien observers throughout the sector would witness what happened when advanced beings made the mistake of underestimating humanity. Navigator. Taeho plotted attack runs that exploited every weakness the humans had discovered during their imprisonment. The massive dreadnought was crippled by biological sabotage, its crew was disorganized by electromagnetic attacks, and its automated systems were failing throughout the vessel. Chief Engineer Somin rerouted every available power source on the Persistence to their weapons systems. The ship had been designed for exploration and colonization, not combat, but human engineering could make anything work when survival was at stake. Their relatively small weapons became surprisingly effective when concentrated and properly targeted. The battle that followed became legendary not because humans possessed superior technology, but because they demonstrated the most important characteristic of their species, the refusal to be defeated. No matter how overwhelming the odds, no matter how advanced their enemies, humans would find a way to fight back. The Persistence darted around the massive dreadnought like an angry insect attacking a dying giant. Taeho's piloting skills, enhanced by his mathematical understanding of orbital mechanics, allowed the small ship to stay ahead of the Valith defensive systems that were still functioning. Security Chief Dongmin coordinated targeted strikes on critical systems they had identified during their imprisonment. Each attack was precisely calculated to cause maximum damage to the bioship's already failing infrastructure. They were not just fighting for escape, they were dismantling the enemy vessel piece by piece. Communications Officer Eun-ji maintained constant broadcast throughout the battle, ensuring that every moment was witnessed by observers throughout the sector. The transmission included tactical data about Valith weaknesses, proof that their technology could be defeated, and inspiration for other species who had submitted to the Empire. Dr. Jinneh had prepared one final surprise for the enemy ship. Using her understanding of Valith biology and the ship's organic systems, she had created a biological weapon specifically designed to target the dreadnought's consciousness centers. The bioship is essentially a massive brain controlling a body, Jinneh explained as she activated her device. Disrupt the neural pathways, and the entire organism becomes helpless. The weapon she had constructed during their escape was elegant, in its simplicity. It used the ship's own communication systems to broadcast electromagnetic frequencies that interfered with the connections between the vessel's consciousness and its physical systems. The effect was immediate and devastating. The supremacy began convulsing like a creature in its death throes. Systems that had survived the chemical sabotage now failed as the ship's controlling intelligence became unable to coordinate basic functions. Admiral Velthar found himself trapped aboard a dying vessel that could no longer respond to his commands. The bioship's consciousness was fragmenting, its organic systems were poisoned, and its crew was scattered and demoralized by defeats they had never imagined possible. In desperation, Velthar activated the ship's emergency communication system and contacted the human vessel directly. His voice, once filled with condescending superiority, now carried genuine fear and bewilderment. "How is this possible?" Velthar demanded. "Your species has barely achieved space travel. Your technology is thousands of years behind ours. How can primitives defeat the greatest achievement of Valith engineering?" Commander Hyunwoo's response became the legendary moment that would be remembered throughout the galaxy for generations. His words were broadcast to every listening post, every observation station, and every civilization monitoring the battle. "You made the mistake of underestimating a human," Hyunwoo said calmly. "We may not have your technology, your ships, or your weapons, but we have something your empire lost long ago. The intelligence to turn your strengths against you, the courage to fight impossible odds, and the determination to never surrender our freedom." He paused, allowing his words to carry across space to countless listeners before delivering the statement that would define humanity's place in galactic civilization. "You judged us by our tools instead of our character. You assumed that advanced technology meant advanced thinking. You believed that superior force guaranteed victory. Today you learn that the most dangerous enemy is not the one with better weapons, but the one who refuses to be defeated." As if responding to his words, the Valith dreadnought supremacy began breaking apart. The biological sabotage had created irreversible damage throughout its organic systems. The ship that had conquered star systems was dying, killed by cleaning, compounds, and electromagnetic frequencies generated by supposedly primitive beings. Admiral Velthar made one final transmission before his ship's communication systems failed completely. His voice carried a mixture of respect, fear, and warning that would be analyzed by xenobiologists for decades. "The Valith Empire will remember this day," Velthar said. "We underestimated your species. We will not make that mistake again." Supremacy's hull began splitting along its organic seams as internal pressure tore the dying vessel apart. Escape pods launched from the disintegrating dreadnought, carrying Valith survivors away from the battle. But the message had been sent across the galaxy with undeniable clarity. Humanity had defeated one of the most advanced civilizations in known space, not through superior technology, but through intelligence, determination, and the absolute refusal to accept defeat. The small exploration vessel had accomplished what entire star systems had been unable to achieve. The Persistence continued toward its original destination, carrying colonists who would establish humanity's first interstellar settlement. But now they carried something even more important: proof that humans belonged among the stars as equals, not as subjects. The battle broadcasts spread throughout the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. Species that had submitted to Valith rule began reconsidering their decisions. Other advanced civilizations started studying human psychology and tactics, trying to understand how such a young species had achieved the impossible. The story became legend, passed down through generations, and across species boundaries. It was not a tale of superior technology or overwhelming force, but of intelligence overcoming arrogance, courage defeating intimidation, and freedom proving stronger than any empire. In the years that followed, When other civilizations encountered humans for the first time, they remembered the lesson of the supremacy. Advanced beings who might have been tempted to treat humans as primitives or subjects instead approached them with respect and caution, because everyone in the galaxy had learned the most important rule about dealing with humanity: never make the mistake of underestimating a human. The legend was complete, and humanity had earned its place among the stars not as conquered subjects, but as free beings who would fight for their independence against any odds. The galaxy had been warned, and the message was clear. Humans could not be conquered by technology alone. They could only be defeated by destroying them completely, and even then, victory was not guaranteed.